right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Really appreciate you getting together and kicking off this vital topic in a session where, we're glad that there is discussion and talk, and it seems that there's a goal on both sides of the aisle for tax relief of some sort for a good number of Wisconsinites, and hopefully what we'd like to see is to expand that discussion to be, how do we cut taxes for all Wisconsinites. I have prepared remarks for you. I do not have a presentation, and because we're on Wisconsin Eye, I will go through the prepared remarks, otherwise normally I would try to summarize it a little bit more than that, but I'll just go through it here today for you. Again, thank you for holding this hearing today, digging into the state's fiscal outlook and reforming Wisconsin's tax code. My name is Chris Reeder. I'm the Executive Vice President of IRG Action Fund. We're this 501c4 advocacy partner for the Institute for Reforming Government. The task before you all and your colleagues in the legislature is immense. Families are still struggling with inflation at the grocery store. Utility bills are still higher than ever. The state still sits on massive amounts of surplus cash that has been taken from paychecks. The direction that this committee helps chart for Wisconsin will go a long way in determining if Wisconsin will become a destination state for people who move. States like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, they beat us out on the weather, but people also move because of business climate, because of taxes, because of job opportunities. Or will the chart that this committee helps set or does not set put us on the wrong side of those migration trends, or keep us on the wrong side of those migration trends, continuing to lose families out of Wisconsin, losing retirees, losing employers to other states. We're really at a moment in our country where there are many states who are looking to be magnets for people who are looking to move, for remote workers, for employers. There's at least a dozen states that are looking to eliminate or dramatically flatten their income taxes. They're trying to get out ahead of that curve. They want to invite people into their states. States that sit stagnant are just not on the, you're not in the game. So hopefully this session we can see some bipartisan work again to get back into the game. We've seen it in the past under both Governor Evers and Governor Walker. So today I'm going to focus primarily on plans that impact, I jumped around a little bit on this already. So when you look at people who are moving around and moving in and out of the state, it's important to take a look at where they are moving to, who is leaving, and again, make no mistake, people are leaving. The last time that we did a deep dive, or the IRG did a deep dive into migration data, was 2 years ago, 2023, looking at the data available at that time, which was 2021, over 92,000 tax filers. So bringing it back to taxes and ways and means, over 92,000 tax filers in that year, and it's similar every single year. They left our state. 60% of those tax filers went to states that have a better income tax climate than Wisconsin. They went to states that have a flat tax or that have no income tax at all. And what did that mean for Wisconsin? Those 92,000 people had a cumulative adjusted gross income of $4 billion. So it's $4 billion that left the state. For the state of Wisconsin and your coffers, that means that $400 million, right? 10.1% according to, where's that one from? It's later on, but 10.1% according to the Public Policy Foundation of income is, paid in taxes overall. So if $4 billion left, that means we lost out as a state $400 million revenue in 1 year. So that's cumulative dollars year over year that is not available for your colleagues on the Finance Committee to figure out how to spend. At IRG Action Fund, we believe strongly that taxes do drive the decisions that people make. If we want more taxpayers, if we want more take-home work or pay for workers, if we want more families filling schools, if we want more small businesses, if we want more startups, if we want more private sector remote workers and effective public sector remote workers who are moving into Wisconsin and setting up their shop here, if we want more retirees to stay here with their capital and not going with their capital to Florida or to other states, we have to look at the levers that can accomplish that at the state level. And the level or the levers that we particularly have here at the state and for this committee to look at is the personal income tax and a little bit on the sales tax. Lower income taxes will help invite people to stay and move here. It's really quite that simple. If you want less of something, you tax it. Higher taxes work to discourage the use of items that society deems bad. We actually just heard about the cigarette tax, and I had that in my testimony here. The cigarette tax from 2008, it was enacted because cigarettes were deemed bad, which they are. They were deemed bad, so in a bipartisan fashion, taxes were raised to make people stop doing that activity. It worked. People largely have moved away from cigarettes. The same thing is true with taxes on wages, other taxes. If you want less of something, you increase the taxes of it. If you want more of something, you reduce the cost of that product, you reduce the taxes. So if we want more workers and wages, we reduce the cost of earning those wages and having those workers, so we reduce taxes to do that. Every time that we poll on the issue, voters support, probably no surprise, they support lowering taxes, they support income tax relief. They support bold tax reform because they understand that if you're not growing, you're losing out. And Wisconsin is currently, in our opinion, losing out. We're losing those retirees to other states. We're losing the entrepreneurs and capital investment to states with more favorable tax structures. We're losing families and workers to states with better job opportunities. At best, we're stagnant right now in Wisconsin. We're not solving the demographic crisis on the horizon as less babies are born in our state and the population ages out of the workforce. We have to work with the levers, again, that we have at the state, so tax structure. How do we bring more people in? Because we're not doing it on our own, particularly in rural and northern Wisconsin. How do we bring more people in to different communities and cities across the state? So what should the state do going forward? First, learn from what other states are doing. So these are kind of things I would ask you all to look at as you do your work for the session. Like what should the state be doing? Learn from what other states are doing. Look at migration patterns, see where they're moving. And again, they're moving to other states, states with lower or no income taxes. That's why, again, there's a dozen states right now that are working to flatten or eliminate. You have Iowa next door, who's on a path. They're flattening this year. They're on a path to eliminate. That's their governor's goal. Mississippi, Arkansas, admittedly, it's mostly red states that are working on that, but not entirely. The Democratic governor of Colorado has, over his years in office, also worked at eliminating their income tax in Colorado. So it's not an issue that needs to be, a partisan issue. There is an appetite out there on all sides to see flattening and eliminating of the income tax. Second, we'd ask you to live by the old adage of do no harm. As you work on tax policy, again, do no harm. When we take a look at the proposed budget from the other night, and I understand that budget is not going to be the one that is really debated in the halls of this Capitol moving forward, but putting a new, almost 10% tax on job creators and eliminating tax relief for job creators is going to do harm to our economy and to the very workers that we all want to help. So first, do no harm. Passing that income, or the millionaire income tax new bracket, or eliminating the tax on employers will continue the stagnation in the state. It will not help our economy grow. Third, we ask you to take a look at how this committee and the legislature at large actually analyzes tax plans and tax ideas. We encourage you to look beyond. They do great work at the Fiscal Bureau. The agencies do good work, but look beyond. There's another level of scoring and of analysis that can be brought into the debate. And we think that you all and taxpayers would really benefit greatly from doing so. In particular, we'd encourage you to talk to the economists at the University of Wisconsin, housed at the Center for Research on Wisconsin's Economy, CROW. The two co-directors have proven over the years to be just really strong economic individuals. Kim is currently actually part of the White House's Council of Economic Advisors. They are strong partners in tax reform. They have put out multiple papers over the years analyzing tax plans that have come before this committee and before the legislature at large. And what they do that is different than what agencies and the Fiscal Bureau do is they take a look at things in a dynamic way. So they take a look at a tax cut or a tax increase, right? Not only in terms of how does that impact the dollars lost or the dollars gained for the current budget cycle, but they look at it dynamically. They figure out the actual long-term impacts on the economy, and then what are the snowball effects from that for increased revenue growth to the state. So they look at what that means on GDP, on tax revenue, on households, on employers, on workers, on migration, on retirees. And that's the analysis that they put out, which is just a level beyond what probably the economists at Fiscal Bureau, they have to do it. They have to actually help you see the balanced budget sheet at the end of the day. But if you bring Crow in, or economists like them, to help look at things in a dynamic fashion, it really gives you that longer-term vision of what tax policy will do for, again, for families and for workers and for employers and for the state, because that's a whole level of it, is if we do all this growth, what does that mean for the state and for revenue growth at the state level as well? When we at IRG had a plan a couple of years ago that we put out to eliminate the income tax, and Crow was able to score that plan. They were able to figure out the real impact to the state, show the economic growth that such reform could cause, the positive impact on the economy, including, again, new revenue generated to the state because of the economic growth from that plan. They did the same thing last session. So again, if you go to their website, I should have called Anath and tell them I was going to push them so hard, but go to their website. They have all their reports listed out. I have some of them cited here. But they routinely in the last session came out with reports, again, scoring the different tax plans that were before the legislature to give you just another flavor of analysis to take into your consideration. Just earlier this year, they put out a report, Tax Cuts versus Public Spending in Wisconsin, which again shows kind of the negative dynamic impact of Wisconsin's high income taxes and what that impact is on households and on the economy. So what should tax reform look like? I think you've got an idea of what our vision is. So we think tax reform should be visionary, and we encourage this committee to be bold. Again, there is bipartisan appetite for strong tax relief, so hopefully there's future discussions that can be had in each of your offices and as a committee at large to put a bold plan forward for the state of Wisconsin. We encourage you to look for transformational tax reform that can be accomplished in a bipartisan way. To us, the long-term vision would be moving to a consumption tax rather than a system that taxes wages in order to help grow paychecks, drive growth, and put more control in the hands of individuals. If you want Wisconsin to be the best state in the Midwest for attracting families, workers, and businesses, work to eliminate the income tax. It can be a long-term goal, but set that goal and work towards that year after year. Are we closer at the end of this year to having no income tax and figuring out a tax structure that pays for what we need government to pay for, but lets the citizenry make the decisions on where their money goes with what they earn and what they purchase. This can be done if you're willing to be bold. Again, back in 2021, at the end of the year, we released a plan that at that time, it showed how you eliminate the income tax. We offset in that plan some of the lost revenue with a 3% increase in the sales tax, and it still included a $3.5 billion tax cut. Those numbers are using Crow's data, kind of the dynamic analysis of what that plan would have been. Simply restructuring taxes should not be the goal. The goal should be to put in place a better long-term system that will lower taxes on Wisconsinites, and again make a tax system that makes us competitive around the country. States that are attracting people are largely those without an income tax. So if the goal is to be a magnet state, which again, to me, that's a really big goal, flattening and eventually eliminating the income tax should be at the top of the list for what we're trying to achieve. In particular, what is the impact of eliminating the income tax if you all would decide to have hearings and talk more about that type of a plan? Again, so this data is a couple years old at this point, but based on the analysis from 2021, eliminating the income tax in Wisconsin would have at that time resulted in a $1,700 net household tax cut, a long-run economic output gain of $28 billion, which is about 8% higher than what it otherwise would have been. An additional 175,000 workers that are employed in the state. That's people who are drawn in or people who are just taking extra shifts and getting back to work at the time. Remember, that was not as strong of a climate at the time. We were trying to attract people back into the workforce. It would have shown an after-tax income increase of 9.4%, fueling a spending increase. So we just heard about sales taxes being a little stagnant. It would have fueled a spending increase of 7.2%. Importantly, that's after considering that sales tax increase that was part of the proposal. So even with that, it still showed a very strong increase in spending and in take-home pay. Their similar analysis on tax proposals last session found similar but less dramatic positive impacts from the flat tax that was heard and passed through some of the legislature. And they also analyzed the various plans to shrink and combine some of the tax brackets. And they analyzed the Governor Evers tax plan last year. I assume they'll do the same this year as the budget debate moves forward. So again, I encourage you, be bold in your thinking as a committee. Ultimately pass the most aggressive reform plan that can be agreed to in divided government. Like we're fully aware that there's divided government, probably not getting the eliminate the income tax plan through in this structure, but what can be done? What is the strongest reform that starts moving us in that direction that can be achieved? If necessary, consider a glide path. That's a direction that some states have gone, where instead of doing it all in one budget session, it occurs over time. So whether your aim is a flat tax or an eliminate the income tax plan, set up a structure where surplus revenue that comes in goes to help kind of pay that down over the course of a handful of budget cycles. The individual income tax in Wisconsin, why this is important beyond just individual workers keeping more of their take-home pay. The individual income tax in Wisconsin does not just affect individual taxpayers. Keep in mind as you're doing your work this session that 90% of small businesses pay as individual income tax filers. They employ about half of Wisconsinites. So 90% of small businesses pay as individuals. 75% of them are taxed at the highest rate. Layer on top of that their federal taxes, and they're paying 48% into taxes right now, into income taxes. Those are small businesses. So if we can reduce the top bracket, not increase it, reduce the top bracket, if we can help drive that down, you're helping individuals for sure, but you're also helping the heart and soul of Wisconsin, which is hometown Main Street businesses all over the state and in all of our communities. Again, consider that they employ half of the workforce in our state. You easily see the impact that putting more money in their pockets to pass on to their employers or their employees and to hire more people, what that would have for Wisconsin. Move a little bit here. So we also do believe at IRG Action Fund that if you all are not able to come to terms on, I'll say the grand deal tax plan, that does not mean you should not also look to what is possible. So, if there's an opportunity to move the ball forward, eliminating taxes on retirees, eliminating taxes, for instance, on overtime pay for workers, that would be both union and non-union workers would benefit greatly from something like that. If you can collaboratively reject higher tax rates, again, on things like tax relief for school tuition, we talk a lot about exemptions, but some credits and exemptions should not be taken away, such as something that would help people send their kids to private school. So there should be an opportunity to work together, hopefully on a big plan. If not, look at the small things that can be done. Again, retirement income, overtime wages, I guess tips is on the table now. From our perspective, if there's progress to be made and it lowers the tax burden on Wisconsinites, that's a good thing and that's a win. And we're here to help figure that out with you. Now a short focus on the current tax climate. Again, I know that others really will cover this more. That's why I don't have data or a PowerPoint. But why, what is our climate, and why does such a visionary approach make sense, and why should that be what you look at? Big tax reform is needed in the state because our state is simply not competitive today. Wisconsin ranks 35 worst for income taxes. We have the second highest top tax bracket in the Midwest, second only to Minnesota. We're one of only two Midwestern states that do not already have or are not moving towards a flat tax. Even Illinois, right? Illinois, Michigan, they all have flat taxes. Illinois, it's 4.95%. Their voters were asked a few years ago, do you want that, or do you want us to move to a progressive tax system like what we have in Wisconsin for income? And they rejected that wholeheartedly. They said, no, we want to stay with the flat tax. Voters, when they're asked in our polls and publicly and something like that, they stay with the flat tax. It makes sense, and we encourage you to move towards that type of a system. On the sales tax, Wisconsin is currently really good, right? We're currently at 6 with a 5.7 combined, and that's probably outdated because that doesn't include the new Milwaukee number, I guess, but 5.7 combined state and local tax rate. If you look at our neighbors, Michigan's combined rate is 6, Illinois is almost 9%, Minnesota is 8.12, Iowa's at almost 7%, again, combined state and local sales tax. So just bringing that back to what our plan was a couple years ago, increasing our sales tax by 3%, so we would have an 8% combined. So still on par with our neighboring states. Something that if we can do that and really take a lot of the burden off of workers and their paychecks is a transformational reform that I can really encourage you to look at. As a reminder, the net cut of that type of a plan was $1,700 per household. That's including the sales tax increase. So that is, all of that being cooked into that. Household still came out ahead by $1,700. On the spending side, this is the tax committee, so spending we'll keep really light here. But on the spending side, as you all work through the full budget picture and talk to your colleagues in all the different caucuses, we encourage you to really take a look at spending and figure out how to at least keep it in check, if not reduce it. Wisconsin's high tax burden, they go hand in hand. The high tax burden has driven our high spending over the years. Let's face it, if our friends on the finance committee have money coming in, if Bob Lane tells them you have X money, they're going to spend that money. I encourage you to help them find less money coming in the door so they can spend less money when the final budget comes your way. Comb through the budget, right? Take a look at what's there. Encourage colleagues on the finance committee to use zero-based budgeting. Let's actually look at it. Let's look at every agency's line item and figure it out. What are they spending? What is working? What is not? It sounds like some really innovative things at DOR that are working amazingly. How do we take a lot of that AI and pass it on to other agencies where there's been trouble over the years? Let's actually do a really deep dive and figure out how every penny of taxpayers' money is being spent so that we can then have an honest discussion on the tax levers of how much money is needed, right? So instead of saying how much is coming in and then spending off of that, well, how much do we actually need to spend as a state for our priorities, and how do we raise the money necessary to get that much in the door? If you look at the history of spending, you can briefly, 25 years ago, the state spent $44 billion. Today, we're up to $100 billion for the 2-year all-fund cycle. Inflation from 1999 to today would have put that at about $85 billion. So there's just something wrong in the spreadsheets there on the spending and how that's gone over the course of 25 years. And if we go up to 119, even more so. And again, when we look at how we compare and how we compete with other states, according to Kaiser Family Foundation, Wisconsin currently spends more than any of our neighboring states. We're 17th overall when you look at a per capita basis. According to Kaiser Family, we're at $10,542 per capita. We spend almost $1,000 more per person than the next of our neighboring states, Illinois. I guess when I look at that chart and I see that we're spending $2,500 more than Michigan, I don't know why. Maybe there's a good reason for it. I've tried to look into it, but gosh, that seems like Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota, we all have the same weather, the same road needs, the same all of that we should be spending pretty similar, but we're spending $2,500 more than Michigan per person, $1,000 more than Illinois and Minnesota, and $1,300 more than Iowa. There's something to dig into there on the spending side to help us figure out, again, on the tax side, what is necessary. So to wrap up, you all have a historic opportunity to lead. There's a $4.3 billion surplus. We just ask you to really, as the committee is working in the months ahead, to be as bold and as visionary as you can be, to put a plan together for the full body, and hopefully the Senate too, that will be something that will be transformational for the middle class here in Wisconsin. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Great presentation.